Hello everyone, welcome to the webinar today. It's great to see you all signed in and ready to learn more about DocsPlus. My name is Andrew. I'm one of the senior education consultants here at Quick Software. Been here for around 5 years. I used to be a year forward teacher myself before joining the team, and I'm joined today by Georgina.
Hi, I'm Georgina Durrant. I'm a former secondary school teacher and a SENCO, and I'm the founder of the SEN Resources blog, and I also tutor children with special education needs, and I'm a published author in the field.
So quite a lot there. So in the session today, everyone, we'll be drawing on those experiences that you've had, Georgina, from obviously previously teaching, the support that you offer now. And the session today is due to last for around 30 minutes, and we're going to go through quite a lot. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be looking at all the features of DocsPlus. You will be receiving a recording of the session as well, so feel free to make notes, but you can watch this back and share it with other staff members as well afterwards. In terms of DocsPlus, just to do a little bit of an introduction, I suppose, because I understand that we might have a couple of people in here that might not know much about the software really. So DocsPlus is software designed to support reading and writing. Now, the webinar today, we've kind of got a focus on supporting pupils with special educational needs, but hopefully by the end of the session, you can see how you can easily incorporate and embed DocsPlus throughout the whole school. So for different year groups, different abilities, and also different curriculum areas and subjects as well. We've got a lot of information on our website as well. If I just bring this up here, so we do have the wonderful blog that was written by Georgina, so that is on our website, so feel free to have a read of that. But we do have lots of other additional support as well. So we've got lots of DocsPlus training resources like tutorial videos, and we do also have a section on using DocsPlus to support those students that have exam access arrangements. So we can use DocsPlus as a replacement for human readers and scribes, and that is something that we'll be going and covering near the end of the webinar today. And just as a final reminder, if you do have any questions during this session, we do have a Q&A box, so feel free to pop any questions at all, and one of my colleagues will be more than happy to answer any questions that you have. Okay, so that was a little bit of an introduction about myself, Georgina, and the webinar today. But actually going into DocsPlus now and drawing on those experiences that you've had, the first question that I wanted to start off with was, in your experiences, I suppose, what are your experiences with typical word processors and maybe some of the challenges for students, Georgina?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? I was always really frustrated, and I'm sure lots of other people listening are quite frustrated with word processors and how they don't actually help students. Apart from your basic spell checker, you're essentially just giving students like a blank sheet on the screen, and that can be really daunting for a learner, especially when they're starting a piece of work. I find it daunting myself if you've got a blank Word document in front of you. How do you start? So yeah,
it's going off the back of that. So what we've tried to do with DocsPlus, and hopefully everyone can see my screen here, is we've tried to make the look and feel of the software really similar to what students might already be used to, because I think we can all agree that if a student is using any piece of software that looks or feels different, they're less likely to engage in that support. Doesn't matter how beneficial that would be. If they can feel that they're being treated drastically different and they're kind of singled out, they will arguably just shut off from any piece of software. So just quickly looking at the look and feel. We've just gone with kind of like a pale blue, but a lot of the icons are similar to what they would be used to already. So printing and saving, and we've not got lots of different advanced options that you've got to wade through as well. So that's kind of how we base the software, with the student in mind, feeding into that normal way of working for students as well. That was really important for us. And kind of following on from kind of the look and feel of DocsPlus, Georgina, once a pupil starts their work, and I know you mentioned about having that blank white screen of paper, how, in your experiences, can we improve their flow in writing or improve the flow in their writing?
Yeah, I think again it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because once you start, the blank screens can be quite daunting, but it's still like trying to keep going with the flow of the writing can be really hard. And once they don't necessarily know how to continue the work. And I really like that DocsPlus is that built-in predictor tool. I think that's really, really clever, and it helps with the flow of writing, and it prompts them to use more complex vocabulary. And that's really wonderful for building self-esteem, because they're coming up with really good words and they're like, yeah, no, it's giving them some ideas.
Yeah, and just while you were saying that, I've just clicked on the predictor tool at the top. So it is as simple as just one click, and then we've got that tool turned on. And just showing an example, the predictor also works phonetically as well, so we can really encourage the pupils to try their best without that sense of failure in a way. So just attempting to spell the word photosynthesis, which might be quite complex for a lot of pupils. The predictor within DocsPlus will predict phonetically for us as well. And additionally, if we were struggling even when we were presented with these words, what we can also do within DocsPlus is if we right click,
photosynthesis,
it will read the words back to us as well. So you've kind of got, from an editing point of view, not only we're predicting phonetically, but you've got that auditory or verbal support, almost like for proof words. So taking ownership and being kind of confident over their own work now, and having that tool, that just initial tool, just to support that flow of writing, like you just mentioned there. So. And then once we found that word, all we need to do is left click and it will insert it into the document, and then we just turn the predictor off when we don't need it, and then turn it back on when we need it again. So yeah, predictors are a really nice tool that we can use within the word processor. And going on to some of the other features, Georgina.
Yeah.
For those pupils who might struggle with working memory or retaining information, what tools would you suggest for them to use perhaps?
Yeah, so working memory can have a huge impact on students' work, and I think a bigger impact than a lot of people realise. And as a teacher, I'd often give instructions to like a whole class and then tell them, oh, put your hand up if you've got a question. If anyone who's taught teenagers, not many of them want to put their hand up and say, oh, I'm stuck, I don't understand what you're saying, miss. Or they might not even want a teaching assistant to help them, and that can be a huge barrier, because it's how do you support those. And I think I genuinely wish I had DocsPlus when I was teaching, because it would have been so useful. You've got a brilliant tool which is called voice notes, and you can literally record the instructions discreetly on there, so they can remind themselves what they need to do. And I think that's fantastic. You could even get a TA to record themselves with the instructions, or the teacher, then they can refer back to.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, you've covered absolutely everything there. So the voice note feature, it's just in this support ribbon at the top, this microphone, and we can record up to a minute of audio, and this could be absolutely anything. So like you mentioned, Georgina, this could be an individual word from the student, like an adjective. It could be an objective set by the teacher or the teacher assistant, and it's just almost like a verbal prompt that they can just kind of refer back to if they need any support. So just using this now, I'll hit record. It could be, I find writing really hard. We then click stop, click done, and then that's stored on the left hand side of the screen. Now we can have up to 6 of these on a page at once as well, so essentially up to 6 minutes of audio. That could be the student's own voice, a teaching assistant, or the teacher setting that objective. So yeah, lots of ways that we can incorporate that voice note there.
Yeah.
And following on from that feature, because I know it filters nicely into what we'll talk about next. In your experiences, what do you find frustrating, I suppose, about typical spell checkers out there that you've used with other software?
Yeah, it's like spell checkers are brilliant, don't get me wrong, like where would we be without them? But they're not that helpful really, are they? Apart from giving you, like, underlining in red and giving you a few suggestions, but often the suggestions don't really work with what you're trying to achieve. So it doesn't take into account phonetical errors. It doesn't really take into account the context of what you're writing. So often they might click on the suggestions and click the wrong suggestion because they don't know what it's giving them, and that can be really hard. Whereas I think what you're doing sort of solves that problem, doesn't it, Andrew?
Yeah, and we actually did a little bit of an experiment, didn't we, when we was looking at this? So using that voice note just to begin with. So I find writing really hard, and what we can do just to show this work, and if I left click, and it could be I find writing really hard. So you can play it back, so it'll play it back to us. But writing this sentence out now, so I find writing really hard. So of course we've got that red underline, prompting us that it's not spelt correctly. And if I put my full stop in, it will further kind of consolidate that, and I'll just show you this now.
I find writing really hard.
So it'll say writing as opposed to writing. Now, when we go to spell check and we go to right click, just like you mentioned there, Georgina, it will bring up words that fit into the context of that sentence. So sitting, writing, hitting, and just like the predictor, we can right click as well.
Writing.
So we can, confirm that's the word that we want to use there, and then left click to insert it in. And same with really, we can right click again.
Really.
And then insert it into that document. Now, we did a little bit of trial and error when we was looking at this example, and we looked at a spell checker in another piece of software, and when we looked at writing, the words that were actually predicted or suggested were writting, R-I-T-I-N-G, ratting, and rotting. So it didn't. So it only came up with 3 spelling suggestions, and none of them were remotely close to the word of writing. So that was a little bit of we had a little bit of an explore ourselves actually into that. So that's kind of how DocsPlus's spell checker works. It's all about the context of that sentence rather than just here's a bunch of random words and pick one and just hope for the best, I suppose. So so that's what we've got within the spell checker in DocsPlus. Okay, now coming on to, so we've looked at quite a lot of the features of DocsPlus, but in terms of kind of like personalization, how important is it, would you say, that we can change and personalize software for learners and students?
So important. Obviously I'm biased. Supporting lots of children with special educational needs, but it is so important. We support them in every other way of school life, so of course we should support them with software. And there's going to be a whole range of, even in in a mainstream school, there's going to be a whole range of SEND in any given class, from dyslexia, there could be someone who's got colour blindness, visual impairments, hearing impairments, all of these different things. You might have students with English as an additional language. So being able to change a few things just to personalise and suit their needs is hugely important. And like you said as well, it still looks the same. So you're keeping their street cred, you're making them feel included and the same as everybody else, but you've just got clever little tweaks that make it better for them. So things that include, and I'm sure you'll show them, there's things like the speed of the voice when they're reading it out, that can be changed, can't it? The type of voice, what else have we got? The predictor, you can change the predictor.
Here we go.
I'm going too fast. I'll slow down, Andrew, so you can show these.
No, yeah, I
I like that you can do coloured overlays on there. That's not something you can do on other WordPress.
Usually you'd have to like stick something on the screen. So I was just showing, just as you were describing those, I was just going through a couple, and all of these subtle changes as well. They can all be accessed through the options at the top of the screen. Yeah. So, and I think that's important. I know we mentioned this earlier, but having those subtle changes that are specific for the individual that won't make them feel like they're using something drastically different from other pupils. So it's all about that. I bring it up quite a lot. It's that inclusive classroom, making sure everyone feels like they're together, working alongside their peers, and not having something that feels drastically different that's just going to put them off almost immediately. So yeah, in the options we've got lots of different settings which we can change and adapt. And something to just mention to everyone as well is that DocsPlus is compatible with eye gazes and switches. That's just one thing that I want to mention. So if you do have any learners that access software in that particular way, if we go into options, access, and then go into the access method, we can change it just by switching the options here with what access method that student will be using. And just to finish off with the options, once we've set up, for example, the background colour, so if I just change this now, as you can see, instantly changes for us as well.
Nice.
Rather than setting this up at the start of every lesson, to save us time as teachers and teaching assistants, once this is set up once, if you click on the export button at the top, that will save all of these settings into a file. And once you click on that file, it will automatically load up DocsPlus with all of these changes automatically applied. So you set it up once, months prior, and then you double click and it opens up like this with that background color, for example. So same again, we've tried to make it as...
That's really nice for the kids as well, isn't it, Andrew? Because they're not feeling like they're a burden. They're not having to be like, oh, can you just change the overlay, and can you change, because I know the font can change, that special dyslexia font as well. They're not having to ask for that. They just click on and that's just how they personalize it. I like that.
Yeah, it's just being really intuitive, really, isn't it? It's just putting putting the students at the centre of it all, and that's kind of what we've done with DocsPlus. We thought about the student, how they would access it, what do they need more importantly, and everything is based around that. And yeah, just going on to that font style there, you can change the font just by clicking on that drop down arrow. And we do have a dyslexia friendly font called Dyslexia. It's like weighted at the bottom, clear spacing in between each letter as well. So that's a nice font to use there. So that was kind of an overview there, Georgina, that we've gone through with everyone today about the word processor. Now, we're going to come on to the next section, which is all about kind of the different activities and templates that we can use with pupils when they come to actually kind of writing those essays or extended pieces of work. So, Georgina, when you were a SENCO and a teacher in your school, how did you usually plan lessons? And kind of looking back and having used DocsPlus, what do you wish you would have, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, it does. I wish I'd had the learning grids. I really, really do. Those learning grids are fantastic. I was using worksheets, and especially with children who required a laptop to record information, it became like this additional barrier, as they'd have to look at the worksheet, and then they'd have to type on the computer, and then they couldn't input it onto the worksheet. And you're making things even harder for yourself. And I often thought there must be an easier way to this. Like I'd make a PowerPoint slide sometimes and then they'd input it into that, but it wasn't good enough. And well, your learning grids solve that. It's essentially like having a worksheet on the screen, isn't it? And you can actually fill it in, and you're actually helping the kids rather than giving them an extra barrier, which used to really frustrate me. So yeah, I wish I'd had those learning grids.
Yeah, I've just got it up here now. So so learning grids, we've got over 1,000 resources, so 1,102. And what's really important as well is it covers, we cover not just English, but as you can see, we cover of course English language and literature, but we've got science and geography, we've got history, social sciences. So I mean, looking at learning grids, I know we had a chat about this earlier, but who would you say would kind of benefit the most from DocsPlus with what we've looked at the moment?
Yeah, so I originally thought, obviously, because special education needs is my thing, but I originally thought that would be the children that it would be used for all the time, and specifically would be SEND. But I can now see it being used throughout school. I think if I'd have had it in my classroom, I would have given it to everybody to use. Because even your most able students, you could really stretch them with it. Things like extending their vocabulary, making sure they're getting more words in there, more detail. I reckon, you would think that everybody can use it.
Yeah, I've just got some examples here, and I know we'll go into the word banks in more detail in a second. But going into like English literature, and well, I suppose actually we'll go into this now. So we'll come into the word banks, but drawing on your experiences again, Georgina, how difficult do you think how difficult is it for students to access kind of curriculum vocabulary within the lesson from your experiences from being a teacher in a SENCO?
Yeah, again, I think it's how you give it to them. It's tricky, isn't it? Like, unless somebody else has got a genius idea that I didn't think of when I was teaching. But apart from writing some words on, so I'd often write the key words on the board for the lesson that they might refer to, or I might put it on a PowerPoint, or the teaching assistant might write them down with them, or things like that. But it all just took a lot of time, and it was always like an add-on, and it wasn't the best way of giving them the keywords, especially if they're on a laptop. It's not, you've got to look at it again and then look back at the screen, and it just doesn't work. So I think having DocsPlus and these word bars would have been a game changer for me.
Yeah, I mean, just loading these up here. So, I mean, we've got one here on a Christmas a Christmas carol about the characters. So if I just load this up, so hopefully everyone can see the screen, watching the webinar today. But this one here, it's kind of like breaking down that in this case the text, but breaking down the text so it becomes more accessible, and rather than planning activities and just thinking, okay, that'll do. And I'll admit, when I was a year 4 teacher, although looking back, that was the worst thing to do. When you've got a lot of pressure in terms of how much time you've got to plan lessons, sometimes, that you think more about how much time is this going to take me, as opposed to, is this going to benefit the pupil? And I know looking back, I really regret that mindset sometimes. But something like this, it's interactive, which is really important as well. We can right click on these words and it will read it back to us. So
business,
So business, and then we can left click to insert it from that word bank or the word bar, sorry, and put it into the document. And of course, we've got the different characters here. So, Tiny Tim, Fred, and all the different ghosts. So we can access that curriculum vocabulary. And it's not just English literature, just going into some of the other areas. You've got, science, for example, you've got nearly 200 word bars there. You've got climate change, you've got, power stations, you've got some really complex topics in here as well. So, satellites and, electricity, magnetism, food chains, and saving you time. All we have to do is find the resource that we're focusing on during that lesson. For example, forces. We just click open, and it just automatically loads up ready for us to use. So we're, they're designed to be really quick, and they're planned around the different areas of the secondary kind of curriculum as well. You can edit these as well, just so you're all aware. So you can change words, delete words, and add your own words into here if you need to. And of course, we've got how many word bars have we got actually in total? Yeah, I've got coming up to 900 actually. So we've got 900 of these across all of these different areas. So especially learning grids, it's a great place to just explore, and that's what I recommend to every school I work with. Have an explore and just see what you can use and how you can adapt it as well. But looking at the other activity, I know we've just had a look there at 2 of the word bars. In terms of organising work now, how difficult do you think it is for students sometimes to organise their work kind of before they start their actual kind of writing?
It goes back to sort of what we were saying about that blank document at the start, doesn't it? And sort of verbally, you might have a student who's really great at discussing their ideas, and it's so frustrating that they just can't get it down on paper. And often it's retaining the information and then being able to present it can be really, really tricky, because you just want to jot down your ideas somehow and before you're writing it out fully. And again, you've got a tool for that, haven't you, which is the sort of mind mapping workspace tool, where they can organise their ideas on the screen and then they can refer back to them, which I really like.
Yeah, I mean, we've got 206 of these, and we can access them through learning grids. And just like we looked at the word bars, you've got English language, literature, science, for example. So just going into English literature again, we've got 46 of these.
Wow.
And just scrolling down, hopefully everyone can see, hopefully everyone can see the screen here. But you've got, all those different text types, and like building on character description, stuff like that. And just let's load up this one here about Romeo, for example. So same again, we click open, we've got, the personality, his actions, and then some quotes. And all we have to do within this workspace is we just click on the box and type, so we don't have to wade through lots of different advanced settings and options. We've tried, going back to what I mentioned before, it's the student and the learners are at the center of everything that we do within DocsPlus, and everything is built around kind of that mindset. So in here, of course, you just type in here, develop all of our ideas, and then hopefully that then sets that student up for when they actually come to produce that piece of work afterwards as well. I mean, in year 4, I used to use scrap pieces of paper, and they get wet and they get lost. So it's just not, yeah. So, but whereas with DocsPlus, it's all within one kind of piece of software, with it being DocsPlus, and everything's just contained just in one area really, and we can use it all on one screen rather than pulling different screens up and moving around different tabs. It's all here ready for us to use. And that was just really a short snippet of learning grids. Of course, you've got just looking at geography, human and physical geography, and kind of locational knowledge in there. You've got history, you've got industrial and the Victorian age. You've got the Tudors, medieval Britain, China, and the different dynasties. And then of course we've got like social sciences as well, so government and politics, psychology and sociology. So definitely worth an explore in learning grids. It's such a valuable asset to the software, and also a valuable area for both teachers to save time, while also providing a range of differentiated resources to those learners that need support, whether that's a student struggling with writing, or even using these to challenge and extend some of our more confident readers and writers as well. So it's not just for pupils with special educational needs, it can be used for absolutely everyone. So that was a quick look at learning grids, and kind of bringing all of the different tools we've looked at today, so the document tabs and the word bars. and I know when we was talking about this question, so did you have any concerns about DocsPlus when you first started to use it? Did you have any of those concerns?
I did, yeah, no, I did. I was really concerned about everyone just producing this perfect piece of work, because if they've got all of these tools to predict what they need to write, spell check it correctly, give them ways to mind map beforehand, how would I know when they handed them all in? Because I'm not going to be able to watch all of the class doing it. How would I actually know who was struggling with what, and how would I know what they needed extra support with? How would I know where they were struggling with the spelling? But you've got a way around that, so I'll pass over to you, Andrew, because I know the analytics are very clever on this.
Yeah, so let me just go into this. So almost like a Blue Peter moment, everyone, today. So so yeah, going on what Georgina said, and it's a very valuable point. You know, you've got all of this, and I've had this a couple of times from questions from schools. If we can offer all of this great support, how can we ensure that, you know, the pupils are producing the work themselves? They're not giving too much support. How do I know what they've done? Now, with this piece of work here on Rivers, what we can do at the top of the page, we've got this tab called Analytics. Now, when we click on this, DocsPlus, it will just kind of break everything down for us and tell us where has that support come from. So as you can see here, we've got 69 words that have been confidently just typed using the keyboard. So we can celebrate this area and say, okay, that's fantastic, Andrew. Yeah, these are all the words that you're confident with. We can then go into the predictor, and we can see now, okay, what words did Andrew need some extra support with? And as you can see there, you've got hydrological. So that's a word that he needed to use the predictor with. And we can also see when Andrew needed to listen to those words verbally as well, which is really important. So perhaps Andrew didn't know what that word said until DocsPlus repeated that word aloud for him. We can also see when he's had to use an activity, so the word bar, and what words he used in that as well. So we can see there he used basin and watershed. So he used a couple of the words, not all of it, but he needed some support there. And we can also see as well when he had to use the spell checker, and as we can see here, this might just be using the keyboard and accidentally clicking the wrong key, for example. But we can still see the original spelling and how they've had to spell check. And then another tool that we have as well is when they've copy and pasted. Now, you know, this could be when they've copy and pasted off a website, but in this case as well, we can see that actually Andrew has identified that he's used the word drainage basin quite a lot, and to speed up and to improve that flow of writing, rather than typing that out each time, he's copy and pasted it. So he's kind of using his own intuition there and thinking, how can I speed this up so I get the most amount of work done just by copy and pasting parts that I've used previously. So and what we can do as well, we can print this off on paper. So, you know, if you wanted to have a physical copy of this, print it off, put it in their books, and we can then further annotate over this as well if we need to.
Well, I didn't know that, Andrew. I didn't know you could print it off. That's
you know, so I think, you know, hopefully we're, you know, in this session today, everyone that's joined, hopefully we're learning everything. You know, hopefully we're learning new things together as well. So yeah, you can print stuff off, cool. And we've even got a teacher's note section. So looking at annotating, especially if you're working with a pupil one-to-one, as a TA or as a teacher, you can add notes into here, and then they will also be printed off on paper just at the bottom of the page. So Andrew needed extra support for X, Y, and Z, and that will also be in the analytics. So yeah, we can print that off as well on paper. So that was kind of finishing off the document and the learning grids and all of that great support that we can offer pupils. And finishing off now with almost kind of the area that a lot of schools that I speak to, especially looking at the exam mode access. So Georgina, I know we looked at this together quite a lot, but with DocsPlus having a built-in exam mode, what impacts can you see this having on students who have those access arrangements?
Yeah, I think it's great. It builds into sort of a usual way of working. So they've been using it, if they're using it in class a lot, then it just become that usual way of working. It's providing consistency for the student and developing their own independence, their confidence, their self-esteem. And it also, from like a Senko point of view, it impacts a lot on your logistics for the exam period. So I know it used to be really, really difficult to organise the rooms, teaching assistants, who's going to be a scribe, who's going to be a reader, how are you going to do it? Often you don't have enough TAs, you know, and you've got to work out how you're going to do that for the exams. And I think it does that for you. It can be those for you, which is really, really helpful. And probably from a cost perspective as well, I imagine it's a little bit cheaper as well.
Yeah, I do get that quite a lot actually, from obviously the support for the pupils, but the saving element from a cost perspective, yes, because you're not having to pay human readers, every term, but also the saving element from the perspective of finding rooms as well. I found when you've got human readers, you might have to find 8 different rooms to accommodate for X amount of pupils, which of course that causes a lot of disruption. Whereas with DocsPlus, and we'll come on to it in a second with how it functions, you can have, you know, a lot more pupils in that room with headphones in, so you're reducing the room usage as well as also the cost perspective, looking at it from both angles. And I've just got this screen up here just as you was describing all of that, Georgina, but this is if we have a student that has a human reader, and that's their kind of access arrangements, within DocsPlus we can use a doc reader instead. If we have a student that requires a scribe, we can, within DocsPlus, use the word processor to type. We can use the speech feedback where DocsPlus will read it back to us. We can use the spell checker as well, and we can use the predictor tool. Now, if a student uses the spell checker and the predictor, they will lose out on those fag marks because we've got those tools embedded for them to use. This area is found on our website, but actually looking at the exam mode now, it's all password protected, and you would access the exam mode through in the options, just clicking on the exam mode here. Hopefully I remember my password. There we go. So we turn the exam mode on. We would then go into the options, and this is where we would enable and disable the specific features depending on the access arrangements for that student. I would then click OK. It's going to ask me to close everything down, so I might have to load some things up at the end again, but we're now in the exam mode and there's no way to get out of this unless we have that password. Now, typically, as SENCos, as schools, you would request the exam paper in PDF format, and I think the exam boards typically will send that exam paper across to you an hour before the exam starts. Now, that is plenty of time to set up DocsPlus in the exam mode. And a lot of schools I work with will put that exam mode on like a USB stick, for example. And what they will do, I've just got a couple of exams here, just past papers. They will then plug the USB stick in. They would then find that exam paper, and then they would open it up. And this is just a past paper. I think it's just a history one that I like to typically show. But from a reading perspective now, if I just go down here, I can highlight any part of this. So it could be the whole paragraph, it could be a sentence or a phrase. And then I would click on the icon at the top.
Many trade union regulations and practices.
And it will read it back to us. And what's really important as well is the student can click on that button as many times as they want. Now, I've had a lot of feedback from schools where when they did have a human reader, the student would often ask the question twice, maybe 3 times at a push. The 4th and the 5th time, they stopped asking because it was, I should know what I'm doing now, and I'm starting to feel whether it's embarrassment or there was that reluctancy really to ask the question again and again. But they know that it's almost like a robot. But because we've got those human voices, it's kind of a nicer way to have that reader. So we can click on that as many times as we want. And then from a scribing element, what we can do is we can split the page in half. We can zoom out so we can still see that question or the text at the bottom. And what we can then use is we can use the predictor tool instead of a human scribe. So going back to what we showed right at the very start, we can use the predictor. And we can also use a spell checker as well. So that's kind of what we've got for DocsPlus, and that's a tool that we've got embedded within the software. If you wanted to use DocsPlus as a replacement for a human scribe, we have the predictor tool and the spell checker. And that was a very quick overview of the exam mode there. Really easy to set up, just a couple of steps, and just with a couple of practice runs, maybe through mock exams, hopefully both yourself as teachers, teacher assistants, people involved in that exam process, and students, with just a couple of trial runs of this, hopefully it's fairly easy to set this up during the actual exam. So it should it shouldn't be as scary as what the exams are at the moment. And that was looking at the exam mode. Georgina, I don't know if you've got anything else to add just before we finish off there.
I was just going to say on the exam mode, actually, just also I've had students who don't want to they don't want to ask questions to the teaching assistant, but they don't even want a teaching assistant to be with them, even though they love the teaching assistants. During the exam, they don't want to be different, especially when you get in, your 16-year-olds, they don't want to often be sat in a room with a teaching assistant next to them the whole time. So having the independence to be able to just plug some headphones in and do it like that, I think can be huge for their self-esteem.
Yeah, it's the independence, but also the trust. I think it's trusting the students, that we're trusting them to have the confidence to kind of get on with the exam in that sense. So yeah, it's like you said, confidence, building self-esteem, developing that trust for the student as well, and just breaking down any barriers that they have from an exam perspective specifically that we're looking at now, but even all of the other features that we've got within DocsPlus as well, and just providing that support that they need as well, so they're always at the center of their learning. So I just want to say to everyone, thank you for joining the session today. It's been great to be able to obviously speak with you, Georgina, as well, to go through DocsPlus. Hopefully everyone's found it beneficial for how DocsPlus can support those specific pupils with special educational needs, but through looking through learning grids, how we can use DocsPlus across the whole school, across lots of different curriculum areas and subjects. Now, just so everyone's aware, we have been recording this session as well, so you will receive a recording of this. I think up to 2 days. So wait 2 days and you'll receive the recording. We will also be in touch as well with a link to booking kind of a one-to-one meeting with the education consultant for your area. I know we've gone through this all together, and you all might have specific questions for your school. Now, if you have asked any questions, hopefully they have been answered by my colleague. So thank you if you have asked any questions, but you will have the ability to book in a one-to-one meeting with myself or the colleagues I work with to ask any further questions about DocsPlus. But I just want to thank everyone for joining. I hope you found it beneficial, and yes, we will be in touch in the next couple of days with any extra support that you might need. And also thank you very much for Georgina through just sharing your experiences really with DocsPlus, and how you wish you had it and how you have used it with students that you work with now. So thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew.